Over 6 decades, she has captivated millions on stage, radio, and television. She's performed for heads of state and shared the spotlight with some of the world's most iconic stars. Not bad for a once shy schoolgirl who could barely muster the courage to sing in front of others. Join us as we retrace the extraordinary journey of Gina Funes, Seattle's Songbird. Our story begins many years before Gina's birth, halfway around the globe in what was then the heart of the Ottoman Empire, modern-day Turkey. Gina's parents were Sephardim, the descendants of Spanish Jews expelled from Spain in 1492 under the Alhambra Decree, a royal edict issued by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella that forced Jews and Muslims to renounce their faith or leave Spain forever. Their salvation came from an unexpected source. Sultan Bey Yezid II of the Ottoman Empire dispatched his navy to rescue thousands of displaced Jews, offering them safe haven, citizenship, and even financial aid to rebuild their lives. The Sultan's benevolence wasn't purely altruistic. He recognized the Jews' immense potential to enrich his empire, and he was right. Besides gratitude, they brought with them a wealth of knowledge and the skills to revitalize the Ottoman economy. The Sephardim thrived in Turkey, enjoying a prosperous and peaceful existence. That peace was shattered in 1912, when the Balkan Wars plunged the region into chaos. Many families were forced to flee, seeking refuge in cities like Istanbul. Among them was Albert Bensel, a soft-spoken Sephardic tailor from the coastal city of Rodosto, now known as Tekirdağ. To create a better life, Albert escaped to Le Havre, France, hoping to secure passage to America. August 26, 1913. He set sail aboard the French liner Le Touraine. After 9 days at sea, enduring cramped conditions, Albert arrived in the New World September 4th. Albert stayed in New York City just long enough to earn train fare west. From New York, he continues to Seattle, a burgeoning hub for Sephardic immigrants. By the 1920s, Seattle had the second largest Sephardic community in the United States. Many found themselves in the seafood industry, including Albert, who started work as a fisherman braving the frigid waters of the Bering Sea with little more than determination and a rubber rain slicker. Through grit, ingenuity, and years of hard work, Albert eventually opened his own fish stand at Seattle's iconic Pike Place Market. In 1921, Albert married Gina, a spirited 16-year-old beauty who had arrived 1 year prior from Turkey. They began their modest life together with nothing except ambition, hope for the future, and each other. Nearly 15 years later, on January 25, 1935, their world changed forever with the birth of their daughter, Virginia Michael Bensal, later known to the world as Gina.
Hello, I'm Melissa Pang. Gina has been a close family friend since long before I was born. Join us as I sit down and chat with her about growing up in Seattle, music, and much more. Tell me about where you grew up in Seattle.
I lived in a 2-story house. My mother rented the downstairs to a couple that were in the Holocaust. You open the front door, you walk up the stairs. To the left was the living room, and then the dining room, and then the kitchen. And then if you go to the right was my mother and father's bedroom, and then you go through that bedroom, and it was my bedroom. My bedroom was very small, but I didn't know that till I went back years later as an adult.
Growing up as an only child, birthdays must have been a big deal. Are there any that stand out?
Birthdays were not a happy time for me.
Why is that?
They just weren't.
Were there any holidays that were important?
Passover.
Passover? What made that special for you?
I'd get a new outfit, and I could go to the temple with my new outfit on and sit and talk with the other girls that were my age. It was fun. It was a social thing.
Do you have a favorite Passover memory?
All of them.
How did you spend your free time?
Lay in the backyard in the summertime and just look up at the sky, pick daisies. And I love the radio because on Saturday mornings at 8:05 came a show called Let's Pretend with Nyla Mack. And it was all in the fairy tales, which I loved. And then after that came Buster Brown, program, and that was also make-believe.
Were those the first shows you listened to?
First radio show I ever heard was Ma Perkins. That was the name of it. It was Oxydol Presents. Oxydol was a soap like Tide, only it was called Oxydol. And every day I'd run home from grade school to listen to Ma Perkins, which was on at 12 o'clock noon.
What kind of show was that?
A soap opera.
What else did you do to pass the time?
Teach.
Teach? Really?
Yes. I used to take a couple of card tables and put them out in my backyard and put chairs around them. And then the little kids from the neighborhood would come and I would teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic. Yes, I did.
How often would you teach?
Every day. The kids wanted me to do it. I didn't have to force them to come to my house to play school. They just wanted to come.
So kids would come home from school just to go back to school?
No, we only did school during the summertime when there was no school.
What else did you do during the summers?
Then I belonged to the reading club at the Seattle Public Library, and I pretty much always read more books than anybody in that whole area, in that neighborhood. So I always got a ribbon at the end of the summer.
What else did you do to pass the time?
I loved to play with paper dolls and dress them up. And usually if a friend came over to play, I would tell my mother I wasn't home because I wanted to just play with my dolls the way I wanted to play with them.
What kind of things did you do as a family?
We would go to like Madrona Park or Mount Baker or Alki, and my mother would pack a little picnic, and that's what we did.
Tell me a little bit about your family.
My Aunt Victoria, who was very absent-minded. She was a very funny lady. She called my mother up one day and she said, "Regina, I don't know what happened. I know I took out 4 pieces of toast and I put them in the oven to toast because the toaster is broken and they disappeared. Somebody came and took them," and she was very upset. Now my mother said, "No, you just think you did." She says, "No, I know I did it." And then that night when she went to get something out of the freezer, there was the 4 pieces of bread in the freezer. She did things like that all the time. She was very funny. My mother was a walking funny. Oh, well, one time I remember in the middle of the night, my mother said, "Albert, get up. There's somebody coming into the house." And he said, no, you're just imagining it. No, get the gun. Of course, she had no bullets in the gun. So she took the gun and she went to the window of the bedroom and there was somebody that was going out of the house. And she says, "Stop or I'll shoot." And he stopped and she called the police and they came and got him. She was very strong. Another time we were at Soap Lake because that's where we went on vacations. She'd bring practically the whole kitchen there. I can't imagine that it was a vacation for her because she cooked and cleaned. And the cabin would be cleaner when we left than it was when we got there. And one time a rattlesnake came into our kitchen and she was very nonplussed. She took a broom and she was sweeping it out and said, "Get out of here and don't come back no more." The snake observed her.
Did your parents speak English in the home?
My mother spoke Spanish and Turkish with my father. English was the third language for her. My dad could speak Japanese, he could speak Greek, he could speak French, he could speak Hebrew, he could speak Spanish, Ladino. What else? Did I say Italian?
How are things different since you were a kid?
Lots of things have changed since I was a child. When I was young, there was just time to play outside with your other friends or by yourself. There was no television. There was radio. And it was great because you had an imagination and you could use it. Whereas now, everything is played up for you. You don't have to use your imagination as much. Less people, less crowded. Safer. I could get on a bus and go downtown when I was 8 years old. An 8-year-old could not do that today without some sort of fear for the parents.
What's something you had in your house you wouldn't find today?
We had a telephone and we had a party line. So if you picked up the phone and somebody else was on the line, you had to wait till it was your turn. And then we had an upright piano in the living room.
Who played it?
Me.
So they got the piano for you?
Yes.
Did you have to do chores after school?
None. Not until I was a lot older, and I did them on my own because I felt bad.
What's the worst thing you ever got away with when you were a kid?
Hit and run probably was my worst thing.
Really?
I was with a bunch of girls, and I was trying to get out of a parking spot, and I sideswiped a car that was not moving, and I probably should have left a note there or something, but I was petrified. And as I pulled away, the cop was waving to me, but I thought he was just waving to me, so I waved back. And of course, I was caught. They came to my house.
Gina's childhood was happy, if a bit lonely as an only child, until 1940, when a shy little 5-year-old arrived from Hong Kong and joined Gina in the same kindergarten class at Horace Mann School. Though Gina made few friends, the connections she forged endure. That chance meeting on the playground sparked a lifelong friendship with Shirley Pang. They remain close to this day.
Okay, Mom, tell everyone who you are.
I am Boogie. Gina will know who Boogie is because she's the other Boogie. We've met since we were about 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old. And it was at Horace Mann School. We had just started kindergarten. And sometimes when you meet someone, even though you don't know them, you know that the friendship was just meant to be.
What's the secret to such a long friendship?
I think why our friendship has lasted this long was because of her personality. Gina is very down to earth, has integrity, and she's always been like a sister to me.
She loved music but never dreamed of it as a career. But by high school, her talent was undeniable. From school musicals to operettas and choir performances, Gina always took center stage. After graduating high school in 1952, she entered the University of Washington.
I studied at the University of Washington under Dr. Stanley Chappell, who had the music department. He's a marvelous teacher. I had a lot of fun performing with him, and I learned a lot from him. And that was the beginning, and I started singing opera a lot.
But by 1955, like many women of the era, she swapped a cap and gown for a wedding dress, marrying David Funes, a furniture store owner.
You were born Virginia Bensel. How did you become Gina Funes?
When I was very young, I was walking to the library, as I did all the time, and he was walking across the street, on the other side of the street, walking the opposite direction. I was with Madeline, and I turned to Madeline for no reason in the world, and I said, I'm going to marry that man. I had no clue who he was even. She says, that's Dave Funes. You're not going to marry him. And I went, I think I am. And then I went to the library, and that was the end of it. And then years later, he asked me out on a date, and it was the same guy. And that's when I double dated with him and his cousin, Dave Funes. And as a group, we were having so much fun that I didn't really know the real Dave Funes. And so I married him.
When did you get married?
I think I got married in 1954 or 5. Aquarians aren't good with dates.
Did you at least get a decent honeymoon?
Well, we went to Las Vegas first. I was totally very sick, so we didn't stay there one day, and then we went to Soap Lake where my mom and dad were.
That was my honeymoon.
Within 2 years, she welcomed her daughter, Francine, and son, Maurice. However, life with David turned abusive. Refusing to tolerate it, Gina left. Juggling odd jobs to get by, determined to raise her children on her own. One thing never left her: her love of singing.
Did you go right into singing, or did you do other kinds of work?
Yes, I had many jobs. I was a secretary who didn't know how to type or do anything for Pacific and Atlantic shippers. And I loved that job. I gave great telephone. When you're in the shipping business, packages and things get missing or they come all broken up. And so they would call screaming on the phone, and they always gave the phone to me if it was a bad one. And then I would say, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, how horrible that is. And I would just talk them down, and I would talk them out of being angry. And then I'd soften them up. And then our boss, Sam Patterson, would talk to them after that.
Who were the singers you were listening to?
When? At what age?
Let's say high school.
High school would be like Joni James. And then when I was out of high school, Barbra Streisand.
Gina worked tirelessly to keep food on the table. Then in 1960, by sheer luck, She saw a newspaper article that changed her life.
What was your first professional gig?
I had to make a living after I got a divorce, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to sing, and I thought, well, maybe that'll be a good job. And so I started working in clubs in Seattle. There were two wonderful columnists, Emmett Watson and Walt Evans, and all of them came to see me at one point or another at the different clubs in Seattle, and they wrote really good reviews. And from there, a man saw the reviews and he wanted to meet me, and he came to one of my jobs and he became my publicist, and his name was Paul Lowney.
You didn't have a manager?
Now, I know you're supposed to have like a manager first and then a publicist, but I didn't know any better. I just knew that I needed to sing and make some money to support my kids.
What exactly did he do for you?
He got me several bookings, and I got a wonderful, great pianist that happened to be in Seattle. His name was Pete Blue, and he was from New York, and he was here because he followed his girlfriend here. So I was so fortunate to get him because he knew everything, every song that was on Broadway at the time. He was marvelous.
Booking shows? Finding musicians? It sounds like he did more than just publicity.
Yeah, he did a great job.
How did he promote you?
So Paul sent some press packets down to San Francisco to the Hungry Eye. Now, the Hungry Eye at that time was a major club run by Enrico Banducci, and all the big players played there, Glenn Yarborough, Mort Saul, Barbra Streisand. And it was a wonderful club, and the crowd that went there was the Mink crowd. Lovely audience, and I did great there.
Something happened after a show. Can you talk about that?
One night, Dave Allen came up to me. Dave Allen was the manager of the club, and he said he was having a party at his house and he would love for me to come. And I said, okay. So he said, I'll send a limo for you, which he did. So I show up at his house and I'm expecting a big party and it's going to be fun. And he greeted me at the door and said, oh, the darndest thing happened. That everybody backed out. I guess it's just you and me. And then I thought, you and me, what does that mean? Oh, I'm in trouble. So here I am trying to think of what I'm going to do. And that's when I put my acting skills to work for the very first time. And it worked, thank goodness, because then he sent me back home unscathed.
Did you tell anyone about it?
So I get back to the hotel. I call up my godfather in Seattle, Henry Broderick, and he calls Lou Lurie, who was a big real estate man in San Francisco. And Lou Lurie called the owner of the Hungry Eye, Enrico Banducci. Banducci called Dave Allen. I know that Dave Allen got big talking to because I never had a problem ever again. And I went to the Hungry Eye many times and it was smooth sailing all the way.
Gina found herself navigating the hazards of an entertainment industry controlled by men, some with ill intent.
As your star began to rise, doors started opening, bigger stages, bigger audiences. Tell us about your opportunity to appear on national TV.
I had great reviews at the Hungry Eye, and my publicist said, I got you the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and I was delighted. I mean, I loved Johnny Carson. I watched him every night.
So they flew you out to New York?
Normally, they're in New York. However, once a year, for 1 week, they go to Los Angeles, and it was great for me because I'm in Seattle, and going to Los Angeles was easy. I had two friends there, Esther and Sarah, who lived in Los Angeles, and I called them up and said, could you come and get me from the airport and drive me to the hotel? And they did, and we got to the hotel, and then I found out that the whole cast of The Tonight Show was in the same hotel that I was in. So I went to my room with the girls and started going through my music to find the perfect song for The Tonight Show. And then I get a phone call, and I answered it, and it was Skitch Henderson.
Who is Skitch Henderson?
So Skitch Henderson was the musical conductor for The Tonight Show. And he said, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to come down to my room and we'll run over your music.
The rehearsal wasn't in a TV studio?
Well, I never saw the inside of the studio.
That's crazy. What happened next?
Well, when I went down there, he answered the door with his kimono wide open, nothing underneath, and I can tell you he's a true redhead. Well, he then said, you know, my neck has been really bothering me. Do you know how to give massages? And I thought, massages? Oh, no, not again. Well, yes, absolutely. I do know how to give massages. In fact, I have some liniment upstairs in my room, and I'll run up and get it and come right back down here, and we'll go from there. And his eyes just popped open, and he looked so happy. And then I ran right upstairs. I said to the girls, okay, I'm glad I didn't unpack. We're getting the hell out of here. And going back to the airport, and I'm going home.
So when things got a little sketchy, your friends really had your back.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Eventually, you got a manager and made a lifelong friend in the process.
Started with Paula Bain. Actually, I read her name in the paper. I was reading the paper one day, and I had the two children, and it said that she had just come from Broadway from New York, and she was living in Seattle and was looking at talent. And I just summoned up the courage to call her and said that I wanted to audition for her. And I did. We did conventions. It was very professional. She had it all in order. She had a great show. That's where I met Marilee Rush.
My name is Marilee Rush. A legend in her own room, a widower at her own time. Gina was Gina Funes when I met her. It was 1960, I think, or 61, probably the end of 60. But I was a piano player. I was singing in a band, and I don't know where Paula Bain, who became our manager, saw me, but for some reason she wanted to take me on as one of her proteges. She was a great musical performer, and she just really had it. She was just very professional. And she had some other proteges, and one of the proteges became one of my very best friends.
Marilee came on right before me, and we would just make each other laugh. We were laughing all the time. When she first started, she was the cutest little girl I've ever seen. She had little curly hair all around her head and these great big huge eyes. And she'd sit at the piano and bang away like Jerry Lee Lewis. And she would sing this song, and she sang other songs, but it's the one I remember the most, and it was called Three Little Fishies.
Boop, boop, did-em, dot-em, wat-em, shoo! Boop, boop, did-em, dot-em, wat-em, shoo! Boop, boop, did-em, dot-em, wat-em, shoo! And they swam right over the dam.
So after Marilee, you'd come on? What would you do?
Then I came after that, I can't believe what I used to do. I wore a tuxedo, I had spats and shoes, black patent leather shoes, and I came in with a conga drum and played the conga drum and sang Babalu. And then from there, I did some Spanish things, and then I would do an Al Jolson medley. Looking back on it now, I can't believe I did it. They loved it. It was the hit of the show. I closed the show. She had a little girl named Hisako Sadiyasu. She was Japanese, and she came out in a little Japanese kimono, and she would sing, "Won't you come home, Bill Berry? Won't you come home?" And that was adorable.
Wow, I guess it was a different time. What became of her?
She went back to Japan. Her father was the port commissioner of Tokyo. As a matter of fact, they came in handy when Fred and I went to Japan years later.
When did you sing with the International Five?
One time, she decided that I should have boys behind me, so she hired 3 boys to sing behind me. That was fun, too. We formed a group, and we called it the International Five. And that was George Koenig from Peru, Juan Perez from Spain, Victor Perez from Spain, Bob Gordon from Scotland, and myself.
What kind of gigs were they?
Well, we did Harrison Hot Springs a lot. They loved us there because it was an international group, people from all over, Canadians, Americans, and we had a great show.
I am Doug Glant. My uncle managed a hotel called the Harrison Hot Springs Hotel. When he left, a manager named Max Nargle came in, and the Coppery, which was the showroom and the fine dining that my uncle had started, hired this young singer from Seattle and a piano player, I think Howard Bolshin. And I saw Gina performing in the Coppery. I went off to school. I remember hearing that she was becoming big time, playing in San Francisco, one of the big clubs, I think Hungry Eye. I was excited. Here's this little Seattle girl hitting the big time. I remember my grandparents and my parents talking about what they described as a pretty little Jewish girl with a thrilling voice.
Okay, once you found out the real Dave, you divorced and kept Funes. How did Gina come about?
The World Fair gig, they were auditioning for Mexican singers, And I sing Spanish, so I thought, well, that's close enough. I changed my name from Virginia at that point to Gina because it sounded more authentic. And that's how I became Gina,
Who did you do that gig with?
a mariachi band.
So you played the opening of the Space Needle with a mariachi band.
For the real opening, we went up in the elevator before they even had the enclosure, and I'm very afraid of heights, but I closed my eyes and we went up to the top. And when we got to the top, the wind was really blowing, and I sang the Star Spangled Banner, and that was the opening ceremony. And then closed my eyes all the way back down again.
After working with the International Five, Gina ventured out on her own. In 1966, a chance meeting would once again change the trajectory of her life.
So you were playing with Fred at this point. How did you two meet?
He played opposite me at the Marine Room at the Olympic Hotel, and he asked me out a whole lot of times, but I refused him because he was a musician.
I was with the Lancers, and she had just come off working in Hungry Eye and so on. She was the other starring act, and I met her.
And we didn't talk. We didn't like each other.
I didn't want to go out with a musician. And then he got his best friend to call me up and pretty much plead his case. And he told me how wonderful he was and that he was going to be just a great guy. And I said, he's a musician.
I thought I was a hot shot. She didn't have time for that.
And he says, no, but he's real compassionate. And I said, but he's a musician.
I didn't meet her till after her music director left to go to Nashville. She was in Atlanta, and I was a trumpet player once. So that was that.
Both wore me down. So finally, the first time he asked me out, maybe a few weeks later, he came to my door and he said that he had an arrangement for me for it's a most unusual day because he noticed that the one I had was not very good. And I said, well, I have company right now because I had a gentleman over for dinner and my cousin for a date. And he said, oh, okay. And so what he did is he drove down the street and waited until my guests left and then came back to the house.
So he was a bit of a stalker.
Yeah, he stalked me. And he had a little beagle in his hand. And I thought, well, how bad can he be? He's got a beagle. And so I invited him in. And that was our first date.
How long before you were engaged?
1 month.
Went together about a year, I guess.
How did he propose?
I had a big date in Spokane, a big truckers convention.
We're going to Spokane to work a job.
And my piano player, whose name was Pete Blue, who was fantastic.
And then he said, why don't you hire Fred Radke? He's living here in Seattle.
Hired Fred to play for that. And his friend came with him and again talked to me all the way to Spokane and talked me into going to Idaho to get married.
Who was the best friend?
His name was Virgil Alberry, and as soon as we got married, he died.
I was getting married, so we went across to Coeur d'Alene and eloped.
We had eloped to Coeur d'Alene because I had a big show to do in Spokane. Joe Venuti was our best man. The minister wouldn't marry us because his wife was sick and couldn't sing. And he says, no, you have to come back tomorrow. Well, we couldn't come back tomorrow. So Fred says, well, she can sing. And so obviously I sang I Love You Truly. The wedding day was going to Coeur d'Alene and getting married, turning around and going to Spokane, and then doing a show. In fact, the very first night that we were married, when I went to introduce him, because I would do the first half of the show, then introduce him, and he would do a solo, and then I would do the last half of the show. And I said, and here's my husband for the first time, and I'd like to introduce him, and here he is now, Mr. Fred. And I couldn't think of his last name. So the audience thought I was being funny, but I wasn't being funny. I just couldn't remember his last name. I didn't know him that long.
6 months after we were married, we ended up in Southeast Asia, playing during the Vietnam War.
In 1968, Gina and Fred hit pause on their whirlwind USO tours to welcome their son, Henry, into the world.
How did you get involved with the USO?
There was a man in Spokane by the name of Dave Sobel, and he booked the USO tours. So we started going out on those things because we were able to pay our mortgage with the money from that. And the first tour, we went to Hawaii, stopped there, and then went on to Japan. And when we got to Japan, he had put us in this like brothel type of hotel. And I said, I can't stay here. Rats were in the hallways. It was horrible. Women that it was not a good place. So I said, no, we're not spending a night here. And I went back in the cab and I said, where is there a good place to stay? And he said, oh, the Fermante Hotel, which was across from the Palace. So we went there and I told Fred, I said, don't talk, let me do the talking. And I went and I said, Mr. Sadiyasu made reservations for us, the port commissioner. And I said, and we're here now. And he says, I don't see you. I don't see you. And I said, well, he made them. And he would be very upset if you didn't give us a room. And we got a room that night. And we always stayed there. It was a great place.
Well, I'm Peter Martin, and I go a long way back with the Radkes and the Phoenices.
How did you meet Gina?
Well, I was in the hotel business in Calgary back in the 60s and 70s, and we opened an Italian restaurant called Marco's across the street from the hotel, and it was a summer club, so we needed entertainment. And as I started as a novice hiring entertainment, Fred and Gina were one of the groups that I hired. He turned out to be a lifelong friend, and Gina, of course, a very important person in my life. As it turned out, of all the groups that I ever hired in my life, they turned out to be far and away the best. I mean, Fred and Gina were so professional that it made some of the other groups seem like just rank amateurs. As an example, many groups would come on the bandstand and they'd tune up while people were eating dinner and what have you. Fred came on the bandstand and played. Bang. There was no tuning up or anything. They're just remarkable. And they individuals, I mean, very humorous, very easy to work with. And some very unusual things occurred during the time that they were hired. We went on and hired them 3 or 4 times.
Can you give me an example of that?
Had an act about Hermit the Frog, or Hermit, yeah, that's right, where Fred would be in a garbage pail, and Gina would sing, and Fred would appear out of this garbage pail. One night when that act was going on, one of the individuals in the restaurant got up, walked up the stage, and emptied his leftover plate into the garbage pail. Fascinating part about it was that Fred acted as though nothing at all had happened, stood up and went on with the act, which was typical of Fred and Gina. They were so professional.
Who is Gina to you?
Gina is such a unique human being. I mean, I consider her one of the finest people I've ever met. A real true friend. And, we would do kind of goofy things, Fred and I, and as time went on, we got to know each other better. Trips up into the mountains and what have you. Gina would come along, she'd keep a kind of a nice soft lid on things. It never got too far out of line. And when Gina spoke, everybody paid attention. I mean, she's a remarkable lady, and I consider myself blessed to have had the opportunity to be a friend with her through the years.
What's your favorite memory of her?
I've been in a restaurant with her, having dinner with her and Fred, and asked her if she would sing. And she's just sung. And the whole restaurant comes to a complete standstill. Just stunned. It's highlights, as far as I'm concerned, of dining experiences. I mean, she's just so remarkable.
At 90 plus years young, Gina continues to inspire as a professor of voice performance, shaping the next generation of songbirds. She still collaborates with her husband, Fred Radke, while staying deeply connected to Seattle's Sephardic community. Each year, she lends her voice to support Jewish charities, proving there's no stopping the unstoppable Seattle songbird.
If you could give some advice to your descendants, what would it be?
Be true to yourself, like what you're doing. Strive for something that makes you happy and then do it. And usually you'll be successful at it.